Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We have the third and final session of the Fall Speakers Series that the London Society of Architects sponsors along with Museum London and a few other people that we have in our community that do a great job in supporting this. My name's Randy Wilson. I am no longer the chairperson of the London Society of Architects. Mr. Tillman has assumed that through an election process that was somewhat doubtful this past week, but he now takes on the role of chairperson, so you'll be hearing from Mr. Tillman on future dates. But they did allow me this honor, which is to introduce John Nicholson tonight and the firm of Nicholson Sheffield Architects and their recent work, aptly named Context and Community. I'd like to just bring John on with a little bit of an introduction that I was saying to John earlier today that we've actually known each other for 27 years, and I find that a little surprising when you start to really think about it. The commonalities that John and I have is a love for skiing. I don't know where architecture fits into that, but John's an avid skier, and we've shared some war stories, but he's actually done battle. I've kind of been in the background watching the war go on, but we have a fondness for the outdoors, fondness for the mountains, and all of that nature brings. John lives in the country, as do I, but he really lives in the country, surrounded by turkeys. And I'd say other things about the rest of the members of his firm, but I think we'll leave it at that. John's been in London for quite some time, and John, you were born here, right? Okay, I want to be careful about that because sometimes people who've been here were born in other locations. And he's grown up here, and his father practiced medicine here, and so he has very strong, deep roots in the community. And what I find particularly refreshing about John is that he stays involved with the community on a number of fronts, especially in the arts, another area that I care a lot about, and we've bumped into each other at galleries from time to time. So it shows his love for the arts. And John served on a number of committees and given back to the community, and I think that that's a mark of John. But I also think it extends into the practice. I think that John will talk a bit about his practice and his partners and the context that the practice and the architecture that their firm gives back to the City of London. And I won't spend much more time than that, John, so I'd really like to hear what you have to say, and please welcome John Nicholson.
Well, I really enjoyed that. Thank you, Randy. That was nice, and I could talk about skiing for an hour, but I don't think we get the points. I'll just let people settle, and then we'll get going. Oops. Well, thanks very much for coming. It's this series and the work that Maurizio puts into it and the Society puts into it is, I think, a really important tool for us to gather and learn about architecture but as importantly, learn about different ideas in architecture and approaches to design and architecture and the like. So I and we at the firm are delighted to be a part of it. It's probably when I first met Randy, now that I think about it, but I was standing in this seat, or this podium, maybe 20 years ago, 25 years ago, giving roughly the same talk. And we were reminded of that as we were preparing for this evening, and we were kicking around ideas for the talk, and context leapt out at us as sort of what we're about. And then we came up with community afterwards, and so drifting back those 20 years, we went, well, what was the title of that talk? Well, it was Context in Architecture, so nothing has changed in 20 years. Well, here we go, we're still arriving. It's me who's standing up here, but it is not just one person who does the work. Everybody knows that architecture is a team game. Some people don't seem to realize that it's not just the name at the front or the names involved. But I really want to emphasize that it is generally, and our firm is specifically, very much a team-oriented place. So while I'm here, I'm standing up here for my partners, Jim, Walter, and Gerald, who are good guys and have my back. And our associates, also long-standing members of our firm with huge skill sets of varying types and skill sets, I might add, that extend to gifts. And it's just a pleasure to work with these guys and the balance of our firm. We in turn work with others. I mean, every architect does, but it's important to note the contribution of others. We have consultants, and most of our consultants are from London. We have clients, and most of our clients are from London and area. We have suppliers that we work with regularly, and they inform our work. We have approving authorities, and they help us or not, but they certainly affect our work in positive ways. And then we have colleagues, and I appreciate that this room is filled with colleagues, and our colleagues inform our work day to day by the natural competition of trying to be part of the community, but also in a very literal way at our urban design panel, at our syllabus talks, where we share these ideas with one another and up the game on a per project basis, but also as colleagues in teaching. So I'd like to talk just a little bit about the structure of the talk. This is going to be a fairly short history of the firm. Our firm has changed over time. We're not we've been around for a while, not nearly as long as Tom's firm, but over 30 years. And it's morphed from being Desh Malhotra, who founded the practice, to Malhotra Nicholson, to Malhotra Nicholson Sheffield, to now Nicholson Sheffield. And it's that aspect that I'd like to spend most of our time today. So the talk is going to do this. We're going to visit our office. We're going to take a quick drive around town to take a look at recent work in progress, and work that we've got on the boards. You'll recognize all the places as Londoners, I'm sure. I'd like to speak a little bit about the idea of Maurizio's great idea of his first movie that was part of our season. It was called Citizen Architect. And it was a movie about the rural studio and Sam Mockby's great work down there, and what it means to be an architect who pays attention to the community at a very, really core level. I'd like to visit that again. We talk about it a lot in the office. We talk about it day to day, and we'll take a specific look at a piece of our practice that does just that. And then I'd like to sort of wrap up by looking at a project that, while it's not yet done, it's had a bit of traction and gleaned a bit of notice. So we'll wrap up with a just finished project that many of you will be familiar with. And then I'd like to close with a little note, like a one-liner about practice in London. So this is where we work, we spend a lot of time here, and we actually love being in I think I speak collectively, but we actually love being in this room. So I thought this might be a time just to sort of speak about items that we feel collectively in our office that are critical to architecture, and take the architecture we admire, and in our approach to practice, which is shared. I hope you'll see in the following slides reference to this. If I overlook it, I hope it's there for you to see, but it drives the work we do. So the first is a response to context. That wouldn't be a surprise given our title. What we do sort of play on is what the idea of context is. Of course, it's the surround. It's the surrounding piece. Cesar Pelli, who's a well-known, respected international architect, actually says, what does it take to make the place whole? I just think that's a really neat idea about context. I mean, it doesn't need to be contemporary, it doesn't need to be old, it doesn't need to be new, but what does it take to make a place whole? And I think it's a really interesting idea. Our firm is not driven at all by the latest style. We care, we look at it with interest, we look at magazines and the textbooks and the monographs and all the rest. But it's not what drives us. We really care about how something fits. The other piece of context that I think is important and we pay attention to is the context of time. It's well and good to speak of a street, and we're going to take a look at a couple of streetscapes, and my goodness, they've changed over time. So our offering as a community, the architectural community, is different every time. So the context is both place and time. We hold appropriateness. It's not a great architectural adjective, but appropriateness is a real driver for us. Answer to place, answer to budget, answer to environment. Clearly you have to respond to the program, what's being housed and how is it being housed. That's self-evident. But sometimes just doing that simply, responsibly, and directly is the way to go. And that's largely where we start. But that just gets you to building, or alternately housing a use. And what we try to look at is what type of order can make that program come to life, to sing and the like. We talk about this sort of stuff from time to time at syllabus when we say, guys, what's the idea here? Like, what are you trying to get here? What is the founding idea of this project, or ideas in the plural? So we do try to do that. And by this, I mean, we take a look for the concept. What's the organizational strategy? Is it the structure? Is it perhaps the enclosure? How does the circulation drive the project? How does it work inside to out? How do we express that clearly, both architecturally, but more importantly for wayfinding and just having this work over time? Is it a mass? Is it an assemblage of planes? Is it additive if it's a mass? Is it subtractive if it's a mass? Every time we touch something, we basically try to use that as a starting point and work with it. Is there balance? Are we working with axes? And of course, you can't have an architecture talk unless you talk about light, and we pay attention to that. We're in London, and while there's ample, and the architects are in this room, there are ample examples of great contemporary work and really good contemporary work. We all respond to a quiet historical context, and that response I think we find most engaging when, we hope, in a place like this. We are looking at renewal, not renovation to the extent of restoration, but rather renewal, and an interface that, back to the other context, time, reflects the time on which we are working on these projects, and a very straightforward contemporary solution to working within these. And the other thing that we think about a lot, and I'll reflect on this later, is the idea of community. Who are we doing this for? Well, of course, it's our clients. By extension, it's also our users, their users, and our community as London. So here we go. This is a bit of a romp, but let's start at home. Our office, for those of you who don't know, is really just across the street. It's just south of the market. You can see the JLC. I've got this thing. And we're right there, the white roof right there. This is how we found our office. We actually were first asked to go and take a look at this place as a possible gallery, and so we went upstairs and took a look, and dark as dark could be, and sort of unappealing at first blush. This is not really safe-friendly on it. The shutters weren't workable, operable. Itinerant tenants in below, and so on. So that's what we had. But there was something about the place that really captured our imagination. It was this. What was in this, and you can barely see it, is you can see just some ghosting of bowstring trusses. You can see the shuttered windows, but you can also see that there are small mullioned windows. This space was black as black could be, and it's only lit by the photograph, and what we at first thought might have been black paint turned out to be char, and it was a fire scene, and just it was quite a place. But it was some other place in the far past, and this is one of those. This is this context and time thing. So here's our office. About when it was a Canadian Tire store. What could be more Canadian than working in a Canadian Tire store? This is fabulous. Television City, pretty cool. And what we now think of as our neighbor, the Ann McCall store, right there. So, but this didn't start out as a Canadian Tire store. It actually started out as a Massey Harris tractor factory. Pretty illustrious Canadian link. It was a great big space, and behind all that black was a great big space. And this is the plan of our office. You can see that by the insertion of these red lines, I'm going to prompt the device that we use to break this down. And we call this basilican, sort of the idea of having a central space, a central volume, the great big church-like, if I can use the term, the big tall central space, and the aisles on either side. So what we inserted were in fact the aisles on either side. So what you'll see on an entrance is, this is a recessed entrance, our boardroom above the entrance, our stairs, which I'll get to in a second, reception. That's one aisle. The other aisle is a meeting room, the partners over here in the dark, and then the general open space, which you've seen the photographs and support and back and the work and support. So that was the structure of the plan. And we were lucky enough to have great trusses that you can see here, and really an ungainly situation with much of the materials. But we had this ramp, and it was just awesome. This is where the tractors went up, and we thought that this would form a significant part of the entrance experience. A very steep ramp, by the way. This is one of Jim's sketches, and the idea of inserting something where we could see the ramp, partake of the ramp, have something, and this is an attitude we bring to the table, is what you can put in, you can take out. So the idea of showing steel, covering up the ungainly, let me just point that out again, covering up this stuff. Cleaning up the outside, some of this stuff didn't quite make it to the end, but it shows the working method of sketch, what's possibility, go test it out, go look for it. Oops, clicked the wrong thing. So this is our stair now. So stuff we anticipated and paid attention to, and that was, it's an architect's office. We want to show how things are made. We want to show the history of a real material for this space, steel, where there was tractor repair. A tough piece. We've got there are still notes about the construction of it, the weld marks and the like. The instructions to the trades are all embedded in this. It's a nice thing to walk by. Some guy, one of the workers, was named John. I like passing John every day in the stairs. It's a nice thing to do. One of the things that we did not take into account, which has proven a delight, is that steel stairs actually make sound. And it was an oversight, we have to say. But when our kids come, or when the saleswoman in the high-heeled shoes comes through the door, or somebody comes through and runs in, these stairs just sing. We are rarely, at least, approached without our knowledge. So that's just a bit of feel for the space. You've seen it already, but with some of our guys hard at work. Patty Graham here used to be with us and out in Victoria now and part of this lecture series. So you can see the open space, the aisles on either side, the inclusion of art, but above all, a place that can be decanted, left, and Massey Ferguson could move back and take advantage of the space should they choose. So the start of our drive is up northwest, north of Fanshawe Road and on Takala. It's beyond the Walmart and all that stuff near Hyde Park Road in the northwest. St. Andrews Catholic Secondary School was designed and built to meet the needs of the Northwest, the Catholics in the Northwest, and really a fascinating project to work on. High school's just got so many components. fairly simple to resolve, but there's so many components because there's a whole community that really lives in works and plays in these places. This is the view from the north. It's a funny thing to talk about an utterly greenfield site and talk about context, but I'll give it a wing. All we knew when we started to work on this project was where the road was planned. It wasn't even there yet. So the school itself was meant to prompt place. It was meant to prompt and celebrate arrival in safe ways and recognize that you get dropped off by bus or by mom and dad or the like. So we've got a drop-off area in through here. We've got a bus lane through here. We've got a very important courtyard in here, and then all the playgrounds and the like. This, which we've just simply taken off the net, is a relatively recent one, but even now this is more continuous. There's a McDonald's, there's a store here, this is all townhouses, there's a medical clinic planned for there. It is a place to be, it's the center place of a place that is developing around it, so we've taken that to heart. Organizationally, here we've looked not to sort of a church plan, but rather to how does circulation drive it. So at the end of every one of these red lines is the end of a corridor, and at the end of every corridor is light. So we find this an important way to, it's modern planning, really. It's nothing more than that. For some students, it's just modern architectural planning. And we work with this often as a device. It's simple to find our way around these buildings. The other thing is that we've introduced an area in through here, which is a very central gathering place, sort of the agora, to use the old phrase. But this responds to the front street and a lay-by. This is this courtyard. We work around it, and the two arrows indicate the significant points of entrance to the building. So the kids at play in front of the south courtyard. So that's the view looking across from Fanshawe Park Road. It's the back of a school, but it's the front of a school. So it expresses itself differently at night and when different community groups use that courtyard and use the hall beyond it. This is that front. It's similar to the former slide, showing the chapel on the right and introducing that as a significant piece of the community. And the chapel on the inside, a very small, modest space where kids gather right near the front. This is that open space I'd referred to in plan, a very, very flexible space. This photo was taken at the top of one of those cascading stairs where you can sit and hang out and presentations can work and go back and forth. Bring your attention to the brick wall on the left, and on the other side of that is this space. So that's that brick wall right there. And this is a sort of a cafetorium type of very flexible space. The image has been taken from the stage. So you can see that it can be configured as it is here for lunch or set up for seating for stage presentations, of course, oddly enough, even another church group, or left flexible and open. And then out here is the courtyard. I'm going to guess this is the first architecture talk that has included a strip mall. But we've introduced it here for a reason, and it's a funny contextual reason, but a number of the architects here in the room have been spending no small amount of time with our city on the London plan. We've been looking at how the city is looking to define space between buildings and the like, urban space. It's a comprehensive document that actually is at once fairly prescriptive, but it gave us enough pause and concern that a lot of us spent a lot of time on it. One of the things that the plan suggests, and suggests really deliberately, is that buildings have got to come right up to the front of the street, which is well and good, and I know there are those in the room who really disagree with that. It's maybe not the safest thing and the like, and how do you get in the building and so on. But we actually thought that maybe there was something to the idea. Not everywhere, which is what's suggested, but perhaps someplace. So the reason we're even looking at this is that this has been the norm. And you know, that's parking in front of a strip mall, parking in front of a strip mall, token building sitting in front with a great huge parking in front of a strip mall. That's the norm, and they were looking to get something else. So this little guy here is the task at hand, and there's a building that existed before that was renovated, a parking court, and clearly there's parking in front, but a parking court, parking here, and then this guy in here. So the idea was to face inwards, make that more intimate, and make it a place that can actually be something else over the passage of time. Andres Duani, the planner, has a phrase when he talks about stuff. If I think of it, I'll reference him again. But he said, so where do you go during the revolution? Like, where's the public place? Where do you gather? And in this place, we think it might be there. And this is the there. So it's a place where instead of just the EFIS-covered mall or the thing with the ersatz mal-scaled cornices and that sort of thing, we're trying to say, well, it's a building, and these are units of different types, and we'll just accept that they are. And while it wasn't built exactly as designed, that's supposed to be recessed, that's supposed to be recessed, that's supposed to be 6 inches lower, that, and on and on. What we did get was the idea of an entrance at the front, the idea of an entrance at the back, places where you can apply signage without poking holes in your building over the passage of time. These building types, they change all the time. They change with the rhythm of tenancy, so why not make a distinguished answer to that over time? So these stainless steel holes that in these, I'm happy to report that we've been in business for, I think, 31 years. It's really neat when people move out and move on to other architectural careers. That's pretty cool. But I think we're the only architecture firm that has spawned 4 restaurateurs. This is one of them. This is one of our associates owns this restaurant and is the proud participant in this. So you never know who tenants of buildings are going to be. And that just happened out to be Tom. So we know this place intimately, and then this is the back there. So driving a little closer to town, this is a project that's just coming close to completion. It's the first stage is near completion. It's virtually fully occupied. There are phases ahead. As you will see, I'll walk you through this. This is the Don Wright School of Music at Western University. Music schools are phenomenally complicated buildings. They're up there with labs and hospitals with respect to their complexity. So this is where we were. This is Talbot College. There's the University Bridge. There's Talbot College, the tennis bubbles, the turn. This is the former music building. Tillman, Ruth are building something right here at the moment, so this is changing as we speak. So I'm breaking the law here. North is now this way, and this is Talbot College. So our challenge was to house an increasing program for the music school, a huge growing school. I think it's the second largest in Canada, very, very well regarded, great graduates, but they had virtually no place to practice, virtually no place to have teaching studios of consequence. And the facility that they had, a part of which is here, this central part actually is a renovation. The other part is here and is meant to be torn down, so we've not shown it in the slide. But we've inserted, by way of a solution, inserted a 5-story building here full of these small rehearsal rooms, small recital rooms, teaching studios and the like, a courtyard, the renovated building, which I'll show you shortly, and Van Custer Hall. This is a new Van Custer Hall. But we had an interesting challenge. We were challenged to replace the existing Van Custer Hall, sound for sound. Not brick for brick, not anything like that, but sound for sound. It was an okay hall, and we had, architecturally that is, and we'd had a chance to renovate it a number of years ago, but it's very superficial. Do not mess with the acoustics. So it was a real challenge to move forward with this hall. It was cherished purely from the acoustic perspective. I should just mention that the whole idea of taking this building down and renovating this in the first place was not really because it wasn't working for music. It was working reasonably well for music, and in fact we kept a lot of it in much the same way. But it wasn't working in building science. It was virtually transparent to the weather, which has a horrible effect on instruments, which has a brutal effect on the musicians, and you know the rest. You're related to the business. So we've got the new Van Custer Hall, a stack of teaching classrooms, a soon-to-be-built, or a next phase to be built stack of double-story classrooms in there. Once again, we've turned to the modern planning device of where's the circulation, where's the light at the end of each corridor. And this is more than just wayfinding, although it surely is up at Western. It's a complicated place for those who are first-time visitors, and there are many right here because this is a public facility. But in this instance, at the end of this, and once the music school goes, is this wonderful woods. This is the old, mature Carolinian woods outside the business school on that slope. And at this other end, through the end of this corridor, is another great woods right in through here. So at either end of all of the significant corridors and places and lounge spaces is going to be this green. It's going to be, well, it introduces some respite in the student stay. So this is the rendering. This is the view from the soccer fields, the football fields, and the like. And this is yet to be built because there's a building still there. And this will be phased, but all of this is complete. So you can see its relationship to Middlesex College and the like. You can't talk about context at Western and not reference collegiate Gothic and the stone and verticality and the detail on the trim and the rough stone and the smooth stone. So we've channeled that and are very comfortable in channeling it. But we hope it's coming across as a demonstrable skin. These are masses of buildings, but these are skins. You can see their texture. You can see where we carve away. You can see the emphasis on the vertical. It's done extremely economically. So there's a bit of a comfortable old feel, but there's what's up? Something's up. It's not quite as old as the original buildings. So it's not really an aggressively modern piece, but we've paid attention and reinterpreted the pieces of metal, originally designed to be copper, I might add, to reflect this, but so now looking like old copper, to pay attention to the other detailing of the university, and have worked to prepare masses that are something a little different. So this is the way it looks today. This is where that entrance is going to be, and this is what's coming down. All of this is coming down. So this is the former Van Custer Hall. It's being replaced by this. These are the stack of teaching classrooms, and through the posts is to be another mass of 2 teaching classes. This is the tall building and beyond, and then of course Middlesex and beyond. So this is the feel of the texture. This guy here is where the classrooms are meant to be. The end of those corridors, teaching classrooms, and the main entrance to the south. This is the renovation. This is the new, and of course Talbot in the, it's hard to say old when it's only 1960-ish, but it's the former aesthetic. So we're paying attention to color, texture, verticality, and the like. This is the new Van Custer Hall. And we've worked to the exact same dimensions as the previous hall, but we've attempted to give it a new life. And a couple of years ago, we were lucky enough to work with the music school on renovations to Talbot College, where we did Paul Davenport Theatre. And we worked in a similar palette, and this is really meant to be so to tie the school together. So we think of this as sort of a cousin of Paul Davenport, so as to cluster this school together. We work as teams, as I mentioned before, and I just want to give props to our buddies at our acoustics, acoustic designers out of Toronto. They were fun to work with, characters to work with. And I understand this is a first. We had nothing to do with this, but they did, and just worth talking about the team. They studied the bejesus out of the original Van Custer Hall to understand what we were replicating. So they studied that and then applied it to this, and by all accounts, it's working quite well. It's a very quiet space. When I talked about the complications of a music school, every wall, is built twice. Every floor is built twice. Each ceiling is built twice. Sometimes the roof is built twice. It's fascinating, just the isolation of sound. And of course, what's the character of the sound, and it is all about what's the texture of tucked in behind here. This is not a real balcony. It's a wrap that goes around. It is there for early reflection from the piano off of here into the mid-house. There's nothing in here that does not have an acoustic reason to be. These are recycled chairs. These are reflective panels across the back. And this is the performer's view, where the performer, when he's just coming on. So this is a house of about 250, so it's a bit bigger than this room. This, the school is filled with rooms like this that, truthfully, they photographed rather plainly if they're just an architectural photograph, but they're fun with people and old instruments, and they are really a pleasure to be in when they're playing. So this is the early music studio. A mix, blend of studio, 2 stories in space, in the brand new space, that building in between. These I was going to say by the hundreds, but it's by the many, many tens. There are many, many, many of these rooms. The Percussion Studio, which now has space to move these great big devices and to reconfigure, to practice, and the like. This is Jill Ball and one of her students. Now, you wouldn't expect this, but I've just told you about how the walls and floors were constructed, but directly above the Percussion Studio is this space, another cousin. If Van Custer Hall is for graduates and esteemed musicians coming back to the school, this is for the undergraduate. This hall is a little tiny space, very much the one room, the musician in the room. The stage is raised a mere 6 inches. This is a room for only 60 people. This is, as I mentioned, the undergraduate studio, but a really cool programmatic finding is they give us a program, as I talked about, and the idea is to respond to the program. And they said, well, we've got 3 organ lofts for 3 organs, and organists and staff and so on, and nobody plays the organ anymore. So with the school and the university, we cobbled these spaces together, but more importantly, we cobbled the volumes together to make this space as really interpreting the program, but allowing a brand new space, so they have a completely new space for performance for their undergrads. Complete change of gears, a little further south in the city. We've been lucky enough to work on a lot of nonprofit housing projects, and it's a sort of a culture in the firm, and it's something we've done. I'm going to guess 20% of the work of the firm over time has been nonprofit housing projects. This is a project that we've worked on with the Homes Unlimited group here in town. It's on Tecumseh. So north is up, and Warncliffe is, well, it's not over here, it's over there. The coves are over here, to give you a sense of it. And there's a great park in through here. And this is a former school. So the idea was, our clients suggested that we go out, take a look at the school. Before they purchased the school from the school board, it was a retired school, Highland Manor Park School. Wouldn't it be great to renovate the school and put housing in the school, and the community cherished the school, and it would be great to have this school and keep the school intact, or so we thought. So to me, this isn't precious architecture, but it was a really important part of the community. They thought that it should be a senior center. They thought that it should be a community center. We thought that maybe it could be a renovation for housing, and looked very hard with the construction manager Southside at how we might be able to do that. So as it turns out, while you can do it, it's actually more expensive than building new. But more importantly, it also turned out that the community, which is made up of houses like this, They just couldn't get their heads around this great big box that was going to be housing people, and they were not so sure, and really it's not in the character of the school, or it didn't work for the neighborhood to fill that up. So we looked a little harder at these homes with the input of the neighborhood. So you'll recognize these. They're all around town. They're all around Canada. This is post-war housing, story and a half, sometimes 2 stories, a very simple box, monopoly boxes, really simple stuff. But it is the texture of the area. So our response was to respond to the texture of the area and respond to a fairly basic housing type. It has recognizably housing features of a sloped roof, fireplace, windows, porches, all that stuff. When we presented this, the housing consultant, I remember the phone call, he says, "So, John, does Norman Rockwell live next door?" Like, it was just, it just seemed a little cute, I guess. But then, this is where I'm going to quote Anders Dwania again, and he, when speaking about urban design, he mentions that if you've invented it, it just might be wrong. And I'm not sure sometimes that that's not the same in architecture. So we've gone back to some pretty basic shapes that look like houses, that feel like houses, that feel like they fit in the neighborhood. It was, when I was taking this photograph, or one like it, I'm not sure, my mind was probably fuzzier. There was a woman walking her dog, and it was the neatest thing she said. She says, "Those are really great." Not knowing that I was connected in any way, but she said, "Those are really great." But it's an apartment building. It's one thing. There's a double-loaded corridor in through these, and each of these guys is a half a unit, and that's the bedroom in through there. It's a bit of a contrivance. It's a bit cute, but people are extremely comfortable with it. It sits on the street. The accessible units in an apartment can come and sit on the street and partake of it. It presents a good backyard to the partners of this development. The new configuration, and this is really cool, think of that schoolyard. The new configuration has allowed the backyard to be sold off to homes, Habitat for Humanity in the original platting, the original lots. So all of these peaked roofs are going to be faced with peaked roofs of the new development. It's really pretty remarkable, the partnership they've got. Completely accessible, of course. Rollover curbs. Driving downtown, so we'll spend a bit of time downtown, and this is still on the boards. It's been to the design panel and construction review and so on. This is the corner of Central and Waterloo. This is a condominium project that we're working on with B.J. Hardick, the chiropractor, and he's convinced that we can do a housing format mid-rise that might be better than the high-rise condominiums presently available in London, not always available. So where are we, and what would be our approach? This, some of you would walk by and remember as the old gas station, the service center. It's been an empty site for years and years and years. So the red lines in this instance represent the front face of houses, the building line, as we say in planning and architecture. So we went to go and claim that. Also an idea inside the city's London plan. Go out to that edge. Line up as the other houses in the community do. Look at this. It's so definitive, this. And here, and here. It's all very polite. It's everybody's in line. And then we messed it up completely with the insertion of these great big blocks. So we were going to do that. This is the main, the site plan. So you can see a bunch of different sidewalks approaching what is an apartment building yet one more time. And the approach here is to have townhouses and stacked townhouses. So the expression on the street is all of these entrances. So the pizza can come here, or here, or here. So that there's this expression and actual working of 2-story units on the street, and then we stack a fairly regular apartment in behind, stepping back from the street, acknowledging the corner, and stepping back to this larger building. So it's been fun to work on an alternate form. Randy was kind in mentioning our interest in the arts, and it's shared in the firm. We've worked on a number of spaces for the arts, and the Michael Gibson Gallery is one that is a continuum. So I'm just going to drift back a wee bit in history. Michael's been there for some time. This space seems to have met his needs. It's just the current show. It's an interesting show. It's really a finding, and then this is one of the first times that we went in and just sort of changed a retail space. It was just the most hideous shade of green and filled with computer pieces and stuff. But what we did was we recognized and I think this is half the test. It's see what's there that can be taken away and see what's there that really is benefit if you just leave it alone. So this is largely an essay in leaving it alone, but adding stuff to reproportion the space, to give a big space, a big party room, a big gallery, and a smaller, more intimate space. You can see how it works. So what we've been asked to do, and just sort of the latest and greatest, is to extend the gallery into the attic upstairs, go in behind and extend some two-story spaces to show our art as it might be shown at home. These are just fun. These are really fun to work on. DNA Art Space is a space for Demir and Alison Mattock here in town. This space is on Dundas Street. This is the old Fidemacy shoe store, for those who remember the shoes and not the art. This is the upstairs gallery, and again, we've just gone back to, this is not a very old building. Yosemite built a virtual factory, and so we've gone in there and again, peeled back, which could be peeled back, left it the raw, I'll admit to being a bit of the tradition of the blank art, blank white art wall. This is downstairs, and there was a stair there, and we've chosen to work with raw steel and make a fairly sculptural element of this, tweaking things in the building code to make it even possible. Looking through the bookstore, back on the main floor of the gallery. So it's fun to work with. It's a modest project, but it's been enjoyable to work on these contemporary insertions. Quick romp through some current work. We're working at the convention center and changing its office space into more gathering area that can be broken out into more meeting rooms. So a reconfiguration of the main floor. So what's behind the walls when you're next there, I hope you can think of as something like this, in time for the Country Music Awards. And we've been asked back to work at the library. Our firm with Shore Tilby years ago did the renovations to the Central Library downtown, and we've recently been asked back. And in fact, I've literally walked here, Walter and I just walked here from presenting to the board tonight. So some changes and interventions to allow a change on the main floor, removing escalators and the like, reorganizing the space, subtly allowing for greater computer use and so on. I'd like to switch gears here a bit, as I said I would, and talk a little bit about community and commitment to the community. This has been a complete driver for our firm. All the work you'll see following is pro bono work. It's just work that we've done for pleasure, and the pleasure of working with causes that we feel deeply committed to and somehow engaged with. So you may recognize the building as being the market, and our work here is to extend the community foundation, which was housed in a drywall box here that somehow looks sort of Greek. I'm not quite sure what it looked. It was sort of a pedimented thing that was in there. Some tenant spaces came free in through here, and the foundation has grown really significantly. I've been involved with the foundation for over 15 years. I don't know what it is, 15 years, 12 in the board and some as chair. Jim has been involved with the committee on on their programs, so we are really into this place and enjoy their work. So we added the work, and this is just work we've done for them. But here's the thing. What we didn't realize is how much we would derive from the simple pleasure of working on this space. It took us, I don't know what it was, I think we thought it might be 4 months. It ended up being 6 or so. And the whole of the community foundation, everybody who worked in that space and now works in this, moved in with us. They joined us in the office when this happened, because we're just across the street, as you've seen. And I don't know what it did. We've got many of the office people here, but it really was a refreshing thing to have a completely and utterly different group of people working within us, embedded, sharing everything, meeting room, lunches, lunch space, work bays, and the like. I just encourage anybody to do it if they can. It was a really positive experience. This is the finding. I should just quickly point out, this was an essay in massing, trying to make a mass of a chunk of building type, another type. There is a kitchen in the market that this reflects, and quite deliberately, so as to not make too much of a palette. We changed the entry. But importantly here, we've introduced a whole bunch of windows, a whole bunch of light, as much as anything to say, what's going on in there? That's an interesting place to be, and there are a lot of people doing very interesting and good work inside it. Front entrance with new art, lots and lots of light. So that was something that I was passionate about. Partner Gerald Gallagher works with the downtown folks. He's head of the LDBA, and son of a gun, he did roughly the same thing for them. They've spent time in our office. We've now spent time in theirs, and working with them. We've worked on their space to refresh, renew, plan a bowling alley. As it turns out, there are even markers in there to help with the length. No surprise, there's original art and a reconfiguration of the space. Again, an engagement with our community as a pro bono exercise. Partner Jim Sheffield, working with the Engage program of the Community Foundation, was working on this test of, sort of notionally it's a learn how to be a volunteer type of thing. But for whatever reason, the committee Jim worked with really got their heads into this kids country club. And that program was, Jim, 2 years old, two years ago. It's still alive. They're still working on it. They're still working on options. This is one of the pavilions down near Parkwood, options to explore this, which are still alive, and alternate options for another greenfield site. So it's just, that's another place of engagement with that's been ongoing and has again informed the firm. This is an image that might be familiar to some of you. I know McMichael's here. Mike, I've looked at this image a number of times. We were asked to work on this by Music London, and this is the City Hall, Reg Cooper Square. This isn't Centennial Hall, right there, and of course the Centennial House and so on. And that was the strangest call for expressions of interest and calls for proposals from the community that you'll remember. It just was strange, but it was all taken very seriously, and it came ever so close to happening. It as an idea, not necessarily this. So the idea was that there were funds out there to celebrate the sesquicentennial and all that, so I won't get into the long story and the political players, but just simply to say that this was another labor of love that involved the insertion of a reconfiguration of Centennial Hall onto the parking lot for London Life. There were partners' efforts that were meant to be here or here. These are purely diagrammatic. But the idea behind this is what I wanted to talk about tonight, and that was the idea of continuity and context and re-engaging and re-establishing the city that was, and getting a whole neighborhood, after all, reconnected back to Victoria Park without taking that ridiculous trip through and around Centennial Hall. We were also looking to provide a site for future growth of the City Hall. They are chock-a-block. They're in 9 different buildings downtown, so this was a completely deliberate freeing of space, but beyond our program. The scale of this and its orientation and reflecting it this way was to house a house of 1,200 audience members, but also to house in different configuration rental facilities in different configurations through the halls, a rental configuration and a practice configuration for the several layers of this. But the idea being that this 2-story space opens onto our own front yard, and that's our front yard, Victoria Park, and just as this does, and smaller rooms in through here. So it was really meant as a as a reinforcement of a place, an urban place. And there's lots of discussion about where this could go, and it will be ongoing, but there were certainly some strong reasons for considering what we did there. So rehearsal halls, musicians' entrance, staff and support, open space. There's a resemblance that I'm sure you'll see to Four Seasons Opera House. Very simple. Back to that solution of program that we talked about at the beginning. This is simple. Like, it's really simple. These are simple boxes planned in a very deliberate, simple way. Well, the budget is critical. The funds that are afforded this sort of thing in our city are abysmal. So you better solve the problem elegantly, but very, very, very simply. I'd like to wrap up with this project. We've been working away with the Roundhouse, with a company called Creative Properties, and their tenants are Attraction, now Ellipsis Technologies for some time. And while this project is still very much underway, it's somehow seen, well, it's been recognized a lot. It's been very rewarding. What you're seeing is, of course, the current state of completion of the Roundhouse. This is how we first saw it, or how it was presented to us as the task at hand. And it was presented by a set of, I must tell you, very proud owners who had held the property for some time, a long, long time, who had, against all odds, found a railway-savvy, railway-passionate, railway-crazed tenant in the high-tech world, in the person of Sean Adamson and Dave Bilson over at our Attraction and Ellipsis. So they were in. Sign me up. Railway history and all that. And we were brought along. And I think, again, to the working with history and the insertion of modern stuff in history, and lots of architects in the room would have done exactly the same thing, but it takes a certain deliberate nature to say, well, this has been a successful building in the past. I'm going to back up, and it's become this. And it went through a past history, and of course it was a roundhouse that's celebrated, but it went through a long history of being a fruit place, a very short history of being a roundhouse, by the way, a long history of being a fruit cellar, and a longer history of looking something like this. Now, granted, this was the photograph that, you know, the first go and sit in the site photograph, but you cannot get a train through this. That's just not going to happen. Or this. They raised the floors. So what was at first apparent and what everybody thought was, well, this is the volume and it's fabulous, but it stops here, and without giving the least bit of thought as to how big a railway engine is. The floor of this was a full 4.5 feet below this. You couldn't see any of the outside of this when we were there because of all that stuff and junk on the other side. And yet, can you imagine as an owner, you saying, I've got this much covered square footage, I've got all this stuff, and I want to keep the stuff, and I've got all this square footage, and it's built and paid for and all that. So our strong suggestion was to get rid of all this stuff so as to claim a space that isn't there at all. To turn the building around, to make its front north, face north, and to make the very obvious to us suggestion that the space that isn't there is the front of the building and in fact the center of it all. So we prepared plans working with, clearly with the owners and tenants. So this is the idea of the thing that the railway turntable would have been here. This is the roundhouse. And the idea is to expand, and this has happened already, from to here at an entrance to here for a new tenant. This is under works to plan for this, and then to expand again across here, and then ultimately with a bit of a tower, an idea of stacked lofts. First things first, establish a center, get rid of the building, find an entrance, and work with the existing stuff. Pretty prosaic. Grow it again, grow it again. The whole idea here is, once you've established that sort of set of parameters, was in this instance to work radially. So our device, and for those that are interested in this, do know that working radially is a really simple concept, but it's very difficult to do because everything is different, of course. So none of us had seen this when this was taken down. Nobody had seen it. There was not a single photograph in hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of records that showed the front of this building. We had not seen this. It was on, remember that the floor was here. It was just simply not there to be found. So there was a search of history, some of the images you've seen, and some, to be honest, a little bit of educated guessing about precedent from Great West Rail and so on. So back to those lines, it's radial. So the center of these lines is actually where the tracks are, or were. So we've played that as an idea, as to say, well, what would you put into a railway station? You'd drive your tracks in, and the locomotives would go in to be serviced, and there were little chimneys above this called jacks where the outlets were, and so on. And that was the driving idea behind our work. I'm going to come back to that. So here's the addition radially, the reworking, the reopening, the refinding, the picking the openings that mattered, all of that stuff on the outside. So where are those tracks? And this is the inside of the space. Those tracks are, full disclosure, those are just images of tracks. Like that's just steel in the right place, but we had to get the right thickness of the steel to suit the railway buffs, to get the right age of the tracks, and therefore the right gauge, and so on. So that's taken into account, but they are not real tracks. But the idea is that we would insert, and harken back to our office and the idea of inserting stuff. So insert a contemporary solution with rough, raw steel that is of this place. It is a place where there was banging and dirt and darkness, and there's that jack where all the smoke would have gone out. To insert that really rough place, but insert it in a way that might have been backed in. So the clients ended up calling this the locomotive. They call it the locomotive to this day. They've moved in here, so these are stacked offices, above more offices, general office space in the working area as well. In the spirit of heritage work, all of this can be removed, and we can go back to being this house, the big house itself. A lot of reparative work, being real restoration, insertion being a contemporary answer to a contemporary need that will change over time. Behind that are washrooms and service, and up above this is a gathering space and lounge. So you can see the space at work with our traction in there. Those are all brand new windows, now double glazed, but in the mullion pattern, slightly adjusted. The windows are slightly lower than they would have been in the first place, because they would naturally have had benches in front of them. But you can see, or at least imagine, that thing has backed its way in and might back its way out through those now big doors. Some detailing in the spirit of the place, in the spirit of the steel and the hard surfaces. And then we imagine this as packing boxes and that type of thing. It's the mechanical room, but it just feels like it's sitting there, we hope appropriately. And built out this taller loft of a building. This is not meant to be a blue building. It's meant to be the massing of a building. That the whole idea has got this shape to respond to that. So here's the front of all of these spaces, imagined as a new front place for all of those tenancies. This is how it looks. They have great pleasure to work with, by the way. The tenants were fabulous. I've come to the end of our little show and tell, but I just wanted to mention something, because you only get so many times up at a microphone. I wanted to talk about capacity. We talk about this often, and I know this room talks about it often, but we've been lucky enough to have a number of these projects really recognized across the country and the province. I know that others in the room have had their work recognized across the country and the province, and of course the city. There's just something odd that we're turning around as a community and looking to Toronto for all of our solutions. When you go out there and we look at representatives of our architectural community, we've got really capable people here, and I think we should be proud of our work collectively. I think we should recognize that we are very real players and up to working with people who come here from away. I'm not counting McMichael. McMichael's a Londoner through and through. He can come from Toronto as often as he wants. But it's just sort of a challenge to those architects in the room and people who might work with architects in the room. Trust the people who are around here because they are good. And I thank you for that. It's been fun talking to you. I welcome questions. Seriously, I would. Unless Phil Eager's out there. Phil said he had a question for me, and I know what it was. So, yes.
The owners of the Roundhouse, are they going to fund all of the different phases of that project?
I can tell you that the phase 2/3 that we looked at, and I'll just jump back. Whoop, maybe I won't. The pink parts are well into development with tenants in place, so we can answer to that stage. The commitment to an interim site plan and the claiming of that space in front is in play with a new site plan. The work to date was done as a renovation without a site plan. This projects forward, so I think it's fair to say there's a lot of commitment. They are deeply embedded in the Soho community and are very proud of this facility, so I think so. That was easy. Yes, Sir Richard?
John, I really find that project, if you want to go back to it, at Central and Waterloo, an interesting one, a great clever adaptation to a tricky site. That building type, that kind of hybrid of a number of different residential types, you see it around, and I know it's been hard to make work economically here. The numbers seem to only work when you go higher. Can you talk a little bit about that, to the extent that it's a great prototype?
I can and be delighted to. It's Richard is quite right in talking about the challenges of working at this scale. First I'd like to back up. I'm not sure I mentioned that this is in a heritage district. It's in the Woodfield Heritage District, and I think that's an important thing to note. I think this project would be, I'm not sure you would need to ask the question if this project didn't have underground parking, and it does. And it does for a reason, because it allows us to develop the whole of the site, save for the parking ramp. We are in the middle of doing costs. We're 75% of the way through construction documents, and we've, in the iterative point of the costing, so it's a very real thing. I have to say that the owner and the developer has felt that, well, firstly, he's proud of what he's putting together, and he has felt that if you, to use a real cliche, but if you build it, they might come, and that he felt that the difference might be to say there are enough people who want to live downtown, who don't want to live in a high concrete box that, overlooks Sarnia or points west, that they'd be comfortable being part of a neighborhood and being something that is a closer to the street and of reasonable scale, where they can park, but more importantly, where they can walk. So it's not completely answering your question, but the owner is well aware of the challenge, and he's kept us going at it. So, but I think you're right, it is a challenge. The mix of the typologies of the idea of a two-story apartment, which is really the townhouse at the base here, so that's an apartment, that's an apartment, that's an apartment, and of course these are great big apartments. That mix has been is seemingly just fine. I mean, it's only about lining structure up and the like. It's really about the ratios of working the density, and applying the density and parking and the like to the dollars that need to go in. It's a good observation. There we go. I think we're good. Thanks. Am I doing thanking? What am I doing, Randy?
Thank you very much, John. It's, I have no words. I'm just going to let the crowd come and have the private, intimate talks that always happen, and the questions that people are not likely to ask, and continue the evening, and maybe Jim, Gerald, and Walter can stand up as part of the firm. Maybe the other people from your firm can stand up as well. So you can see what John is talking about. And I can tell you, I think that most of the firms in the city... Yeah, there we go.